Welcome back, everyone. We're at the Salmanac. Now, this is a very special coffee stain fairy in that it is made almost entirely of coffee stains. There was a little bit of gouache for her, like with the white, but this paper is an off-white paper. I love this. Wonderful. You can kind of see how these coffee stains were all bleeding through the page there. But yes, for those of you who don't know, yes, I like to paint with coffee stains. I do this just about every February because I do a February challenge. Feb, the month, brew, coffee, and fairy is the subject matter. I like to tackle all things fairy folklore. And then it dovetails nicely with a coincidental other challenge from another artist, February by Brett Manning. You can find her on Instagram. Today's prompt was member of the, I'm not saying the name, I will write it, but I don't think you're supposed to say it. It's not the best luck. And I don't like to mess with that. I'm already, traversing questionable energies with Ghost in the Gaslight as it is. But I do love history. I love folklore. I love exploring stories. I love finding old stories and making my own. And this one was a lot of fun. It was kind of difficult as I was not relying on my dipping fountain pen at all. This was pretty much all coffee stains. And I had two different kinds, which you'll see. And I'm going to share the whole process of it. And we're going to talk a little bit about this race of fairy that I don't really want to mention. I don't know if they're a race so much as an army, but they are, you don't want to come across them. They're collecting souls. There are a lot of customs that people have done for their own peace of mind. If you see one, it usually is an omen for death or some kind of disaster. And you don't want to go out at night too much because that's when they're about, lurking, looking for you. You want to keep the west-facing windows closed at night. That is where they approach from. So all kinds of stuff. But I had to explore it because I think I'm going to keep exploring them. They take all kinds of forms. But Ghost in the Gaslight, for the most part, I love to work with light. And this was no exception. I really enjoyed this. You're kind of getting an eerie moonlit night vibe. This is almost like a blackthorn tree, and then we have this creature, this mysterious creature coming at you. And yeah, make sure that maybe you say a little prayer or something, because I think it is important to respect all these spirits. Yeah. Okay. Let's do this. And now we go into, I don't want to say the name. The only way I'll probably say the name on a video is if I'm doing it within the context of a story. But I don't really want to throw the name out willy-nilly, because the more I research them, the more profound respect I'm feeling. So with this piece, I'm doing just some light pencil, like I usually do, but the interesting thing is that there will be no groundwork being laid with pen, and I'm not sure exactly what possessed me to do this. I really wanted to work with coffee stains and have that kind of be the main challenge, that, I couldn't just run to something as detailed and three-dimensional as ink. I think another thing that happened was I was describing the style that was emerging with February, where it was almost like this kind of Arthur Rackham thing happening, where it's a very, detailed ink drawing and then light watercolors that are just slowly built up. And I think that there was this thing that just turned on right inside of me when I said that, I was like, now that I've verbally expressed what the style is, I wouldn't be surprised if I just did something totally different on my next coffee stain painting, and that's exactly what happened. And there was just something really exciting about how that happened. And I really wanted to work with light and particularly a backlit subject. I really enjoy those. It just kind of turns everything on its head in a way. The outlines become light, and what's within the outlines becomes really dark. And there's just something really ghostly and powerful, and sometimes when you're about to do something, and artists that are watching this or listening to this, you may relate, where you've got this piece to do and you're not quite sure how it's going to go, and you're going about your day with errands, and then you just get this image that's just kind of in your head, and that was pretty much what I think set this whole technique on. I saw this really ghostly image, and I could not wrap my brain around how to keep it ghostly and atmospheric and spooky the way I saw it in my head if it was an ink illustration. And that said, I think that I still kept an open mind, which I think is really important. It's very tricky, but I was like, hey, if as I'm doing this, the ink comes, great. I've been wrong before, but yeah, I just had these two different shades of coffee, and that was all I used. And most of this one, like what I'm doing right now, is the darkest shade of coffee. And there's a lot to be said for just what that is with a sumi brush. And I really feel like I was able to get a lot of gradation. Again, when I say the art of coffee stains, the stain can be the darkest value. Once it dries, like that face there, what's on her face, that, if I just leave it at that and I just, if I keep adding coffee like I'm doing, that's going to dry like a dark stain. Now, if I do a light stain, if I just do, just a touch and spread it over, it's just going to be really light. But you have to let it dry before you add more. It's a very kind of painstaking process, but once you get the hang of it, and I always feel like I'm getting the hang of it, each year I feel like it just lets me know that I have a lot to learn. But the moments where it is working, it's just sublime and it's meditative, and not to mention it smells amazing. Seriously, especially the dark stuff. Right when I open that jar, it just comes up to meet me, and it's so much fun. But there was this feeling as I was doing all these little branches. You can't really predict how coffee's going to dry, but I started getting really excited when I saw how these branches were all going to dry. Or when I saw them, just when my brush would touch the paper with them. And I just started really seeing the piece. That, it's the tree that's kind of dominating everything. It's the tree that is kind of like ominous here. And she's going to be in front, but she's going to be very kind of mysterious. This part right here, like, this was a real challenge. I was really trying to get the front of her, and you'll see me do it quite a few times, but I'm trying to figure out the definition, like how much I want to define the different features and still have the shadow feel realistic when it's backlit. And I wanted to maybe define her body, get that kind of sensuous, dangerous sensuality with that feminine form. But sometimes it just, you're contriving it, you're trying too hard. But I had to just kind of keep going back and seeing how it dries, and then just going, you know what? I'm going to go dark. I'm going to go darker and darker. Because I had this image in my head of her just being really mysterious and kind of ominous there. And she's in front of this tree. Because the story of the image is this race of fairy who, again, I'm not saying the name. I'm not going to. And they are pretty much like an army. And they're always looking for souls. And they're essentially collecting recruits for their army. And they can come in many forms. They can be fairy. They can be old hags. They can be humanoid, a lot of times with bird-like features, webbed hands, long fingers. And they prey on the weak. So, if you have someone near you, you want to be extra careful. It's like you're quarantining the sick. What a concept, I just bring that, it's a little kind of jab at 2020 when they were quarantining everybody. Usually you just quarantine the sick, But here's a point where I thought I would go back and do the branches, but with my lighter shade of coffee. I was realizing, wow, I was able to accomplish so much with the darkest shade. And then I thought, well, maybe it'll just give that little extra subtlety if I just do some lighter branches that are behind these darker branches. And it more or less worked. But it was kind of fun to just try that. And of course, when it's wet, it looks darker, but once it dries, it just has this slightly foggy or ghostly quality to it. They're a somewhat terrifying element of folklore in the Celtic mythology. And the word for it, which, was mentioned on the text that appeared in the earlier part of this video, it means host or army. So it suggests that it's kind of a collective of these beings. And they generally tend to be malevolent, and they're spirits or they're unforgiven souls. They are the restless dead, God forbid, can you imagine? And they generally visit the dying or those near death, and they're looking to bring them into their ranks. So if that's ever you, make sure that you don't accept that. Otherwise, you're just going to be wandering the earth with them. And they tend to try to steal souls before they can receive the last rites. So get those last rites, make sure. So now you can see that there is this dark layer that I'm adding. I think this was like the final layer. This was where I wanted to really just get the dark, because, the rule is the eye will be drawn to the darkest, or the most dramatic ratio of light and dark. So one, she needs to be dark, but it needs to be up against the most light. But I will tell you, this is where I really enjoy the whole process, which is when you've done all those layers and you're doing kind of the last layers and you're really getting the shadows going. And now that I am playing with adding a touch of white gouache, that is really exciting. It is, or I should say it's very satisfying because it just kind of, there's a little explosion that happens between light and shadow. I'll point it out when the white comes in, but I think you can already see that as this is drying, it's already getting more defined with the dark. One way to ward against them is with objects that are considered sacred. And, it can be a cross, or, it can be a crucifix, it can be something that is imbued with the kind of energy that is going to ward off evil spirits. And you don't necessarily need something too specific, but so you can see there's this is the gouache here. So that white is going to give it just the right amount of dramatic flair. And I'm kind of toying with the backlighting of the wings, and this will add a sense of what light is, and then it will also make a nice dramatic contrast. And as this kind of builds up, it's going to be just bringing up this world. Light is going to be very important in this world because, and I kept wrestling with this as I was just doing the coffee stains constantly. I had to tell myself, okay, I'm having trouble defining everything, but I think that'll be okay once I've added the white in there. I think that that's going to flesh everything out. And there's an element of world building that goes in here. It's the story that you're telling. And I'm already kind of feeling the voice of a character who is encountering this being, this entity. And in some ways, is from the voice of that character in my head, I'm like adding light here or glimpses of her body here. And the way the tree is, the way the night is. It's very character driven, I think. Once I'm starting to paint, I start getting kind of it's almost like a monologue of a character in my head. And then I get really into characterizing the subject, but it's with a certain, it's with a unique point of view. And so now this just got me going. Once I started adding the hair in, it goes from a work of faith to a work of achievement, or triumph, I should say. Like, I was really feeling like this is what I had in my head. I think this is even better than what I had. I just wasn't sure how it was going to be. I just thought, rough idea of putting hair, but then once I added the hair, it really just started separating her from the background. And there's just something really sinister or spooky, mysterious happening. Always make sure that you have your west-facing windows closed at night, and don't go out at night if you can help it. I mean, I like to go out at night, but I think that these stories come up for a reason. Yeah, and that was pretty exciting, the shoulders. Because it's just giving you just a little hint of what she's made of, you know? It's like giving just a little bit of that, the way the light falls on her. It kind of brings out the way all the shadows fall in the front of her. And I was just kind of looking at her with my eyes closed, like half closed. And then I just started to feel that the next thing that was going to happen was the tree. I felt like I need to make this tree darker because that is going to bring out the light that is just totally blasting onto her hair and her wings. So as I did the tree, I was like, okay, I need more light on the wings. And then as the coffee on the tree was drying while I did the white on the wings, I could go back to that. And then I was like, okay, I need this moonlight here. There's this moonlight in the sky, in the spaces between the branches. And that was pretty much the moment it was done. Once I had that eerie moonlight behind her showing through the trees, you could see that this was a scene that was actually happening, a very kind of foreboding scene, but very mystical, magical, and very fairy. And now it's signed. And don't be surprised if these entities show up again. I don't know how I feel about that, but it is such a compelling legend. And while I feel like this is like one of those kind of malevolent type fairies that you want to steer clear of, and there's this wonderful mystery to this piece, at the same time, there's so many possibilities of how else they could be. And I do think that you'll see more of these. I could see them just recurring through Ghost in the Gaslight. I might have to do a Voldemort thing, like They Who Will Not Be Named or something like that, so that I can just make a habit of not saying their name. But ultimately, I'm proud of this. I've been doing coffee stains for years, and this is one that, there was some assistance with gouache and the light, but I really defined most of this piece with only coffee stains. It truly is the art of coffee stains, which was exciting. Thanks for watching.
Well, we have survived. I hope none of these creatures ever find you attractive for a visit, because they're always looking. And it is important to respect all these energies. I think that one of the things that I have come to find with this whole Ghost in the Gaslight art project is it makes me even more respectful of all the forces out there. And we're in a very important time, and I think that there are a lot of souls that are vying for dominance. There's a balance, a delicate balance that's happening, and it's just a feeling that I get more and more, and I think that I just get really sensitive to things as an artist. The muses are always giving me certain ideas, whether it's in writing or art, and I have to keep them up because that's when she rewards me all the time. And I feel very fortunate for that, but I also feel it is important to be respectful of that. And whatever you're doing, I hope that you are also respectful of all these energies. And it has only made me more and more spiritual. It's just an important thing to keep close to you all the time. There are fairy out there, there are vampires out there, there are mermaids out there, and all of these need to be respected. No matter how you choose to believe them, they're out there. And
I think it is all magical, going back to that one talk I did, which you can check out. It was one of my walks. I think the thumbnail says magic exists, but I am done pretending that it doesn't exist. Well, it was wonderful to have you along. I hope you got some value here. Maybe there are some legends you know of. I'd love to hear about that in the comments. And if you're not part of my Inbox of Curiosities email list, be sure to join in the description. You're always eligible to win things. All you have to do is sign up there. I do make it pretty fun. You can also find me on Substack. If you like ghost stories, you can enjoy my longer form tales and some of my bloggy mind, which is kind of fun as well. I'm always putting new stuff up there, which is pretty exciting. Well, I'm Saul. This is where the happily haunted are. Or I should say, the respectfully haunted. Take care, you beautiful haunted romantics.